Hi, I'm Tom.
I'm Matty.
And I'm Lewis.
This is the Wigan Way, Wigan's favourite rugby league podcast.
He'll put you in his trap, cause he's a union man. He's got it all figured out. He won't care what you think, cause he's a northern man. He's allowed to speak his
So thank you for coming back again. This week we're going to review the Wigan-Hull KR match and the rest of Super League before we preview the Challenge Cup final, which happens on Saturday. Slight change as normal. Matty and Lewis are both away, so I'm joined by my dad, Andrew. He's going to give us a bit of his insight onto what he thinks of the season so far. You okay?
Yeah, fine. Thanks.
So we'll start off then and get straight into it. We took on Hull KR. Ended up winning 64 points to 6. Plenty of tries on Shaw. Liam Marshall, Jai Fields got 3. Mago getting his first try of the season. Abbas Miski getting 4. Harry Smith, Toby King and Jake Wardle all getting 1. Harry Smith kicking 8 out of 12 goals. The try scorer for Hull KR was Jack Walker. Lots of positives, but it's a difficult one to really look into with the changes that Hull KR have made. It's a game that you would expect Wigan to put points on, but you've still got to go out there and be quite professional and do the job that's at hand, really.
Well, they're the type of games that I hate. They're no-win games. You set your stall out to put points on teams, etc., etc., and it's very easy to get into a bit of basketball, a bit of throwing the ball about everywhere, rather than focusing on the basics that come September, October, win you the big games. I thought Wigan went about it pretty well.
Well, I was going to say, there was about a 10-minute spell just before the end of the first half where we went a bit side to side and a bit trying to put points on.
Yeah, we did it in the last 10 minutes, but obviously we took the juice out of their tank and we got away with it and scored some great tries in the last 10 minutes. But we also did it for about a 10-minute spell early in the second half. But overall, I give us like 8 out of 10 for staying professional, going through the processes, etc., which is always difficult because, you know, the Being fans want blood and they want us to just throw it about and score 80-metre tries every 2 minutes. And like I said, what you've got to do is still got to go through that first 3 tackles, get your processes in place, get your right field
and
position,
get the right places,
and then put your shape on, etc., and your moves. Overall, job done. Job done. Okay, we've got the Cust injury, which we'll talk about in a minute. Potentially, I think as it stands, the one game ban from Ellis. I'm not sure how it works with the reserve thing and the Challenge Cup weekend.
Well, from what I've heard of that is we could use it, but I'm hearing reports that the game's been called off.
Yeah,
so
that's why I said I'm not sure exactly what that's about. And I, again, a ridiculous situation where another team calls a game off, so a player's suspension doesn't count. It doesn't.
It doesn't sit right.
No, it's a bit comical. But in terms of the actual game, I think 90% the fans, the coaches, the players got out of it what they would want. What you didn't want to happen was a game where we won with 20, 30 points, let Hull KR score 3-4 tries, look a bit sloppy, end up in a grind, end up in a game where we're throwing the ball out on the first and second tackle, throwing it in touch, dropping it. We avoided all of the bullets that we could have taken. That we could have taken. So overall, move on. Nice couple of weeks rest. Focus on the next game.
Well, that's sort of one of the big things that we were talking about beforehand. That there was the need to sort of put a few points on with the points difference and how tight it is up at the top. This is a game that had the potential for us to put a 60 points on, and that has properly helped our points difference. Obviously, you don't want to finish the season depending on points difference, but we don't know that could be crucial come towards the end of the season.
Yeah, but particularly the two teams that it looks like that we're vying for second with look like it's Lee and St Helens. Obviously, Lee, we've both got Catalans, and then we've got the game against each other at the end. Saints, on paper, look like they've got the simpler running.
Yeah.
But obviously they've got the couple of injury worries, which, you know, they're not piling points on. Even when they're winning games, they're more grinding games out. So I do think that what we've done has put like an extra point on the board for in effect for us.
It's just edged us a little bit.
Yeah, instead of sitting there thinking, you know, is it 6 games left?
6 games now.
Out of your last 6 games, you know, you're going to have to win 5. We could possibly get away with 4 with that extra point.
Yeah.
So, but again, second and third, there'll be contradicting thoughts around this. I know a friend of ours, Conroy.
Yeah.
He has this big thing about not finishing second because he doesn't want the week off.
See, I don't like week offs.
Yeah.
I go on the same thinking that we don't play well after it.
After a week off, well, we've got a week off now, so we're gonna find out. I don't have a particular view either way. You know, I think you've got to play the game as it happens, and you've got to try and win those games. You can't deliberately look to say, well, we'll throw that game so that we finish third or whatever. I'm a big believer. Get all your players fit. Have them all available. Competition for places. Even if some of them players are on the fringes and not necessarily screaming for a game, you know, your Thornleys and your Hampshires, etc. You want them fit. You want them available. You want them playing in the A team, so that the guys in those first team slots, they're looking over the shoulder. They know they've got to perform. And also the rest of the squad, in any injury situation, one injury doesn't lead to 5 positional shifts.
Yeah.
One injury leads to one player coming in, and you minimise the knock-on effect of that.
Well, let's have a little talk about that. Obviously, there was the rotation in the forwards this week. Liam Byrne was named in the squad, but Matty Peake was quite vocal beforehand that he was getting a rest this week. But me and you have spoke for the last 2 or 3 weeks about him being just looking a little bit tired and not probably at his best that he was for the first 10 to 12 weeks. I've said on a previous episode that he's probably led Wigan's pack and been the only one not to miss out. When you look at Havard's injury, Cooper's injury, Ellis, the couple of bans that he's had, Burns played. I think that might be the first game he's not played.
Yeah, I mean, Burns still a young forward. Cards on the table. I'm not his biggest fan. I always see him as you know, the modern version of like a Paul Prescott, the guy that plays 40-45 minutes, takes the ball up, makes his tackles, goes about his stuff.
Does his job.
Yeah, quietly does his job. I can't help but feel, and I think a lot of people have that frustration, that there's just so much more to him that's not coming out. You know, everybody wants to see him getting his nose through the line, bursting that tackle, dragging players forward with him, in defence, hurting harder. Now, I think, you know, a bit last year, and certainly in the first half a dozen games this year, particularly away, I think we saw what Byrne could be.
Yeah.
That first 20 minutes against Lee, he absolutely defensively, he destroyed some of their forwards. He put himself about a bit.
For me, I'll just be interested to see how he comes back now. He's effectively got 3 weeks off. The week before the league game, before the Hull KR game, the Challenge Cup, and then prepping for Hull FC.
Well, what I will say is, I used to be, like most fans, one of those that had an opinion on every single facet of every single player. Get rid of him, he's no good. You know, the old scapegoat type thing. And possibly maybe 10 years ago, you slightly mature a little bit, and you kind of understand that there's so much more going on behind the scenes. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's anything going on behind the scenes with Liam Byrne, other than he's a young lad. He's played 25 games or whatever it is this particular year, as Peter's alluded to, a few painkilling injections, carrying injuries, etc., etc. He's probably done it tough for the last 10 weeks.
And he's probably been playing 25, 30 games for the last 2-3 years,
Yeah.
which is a lot for a young lad coming into the middle.
It absolutely is. I think these young players deserve a little bit of patience from us. Last week, I heard somebody come out regarding the Ethan Havard situation. Oh, he's picking up all these injuries now. He's signed a new contract. Blah blah blah, and it's very easy to sit here and write players off, you know.
Yeah.
And what we've done as a club, and I think what I like about another thing I like about us as a club is that we show commitment, loyalty, etc. to players that are injured, players that do have other issues off the field, etc. And I think in the long term, it makes us a club that people want to buy into.
People want to be at.
Players talk, coaches talk, you know, and they know whether you're joining a club that can be trusted, that put your welfare in front of everybody. I mean, we're slightly going off, or I'm slightly going off what we're talking about with Byrne, but if you treat your young players well, then it becomes a place that scouts, parents of players, young players think that's the right place, the right type of place for my youngster to develop. We slightly went away from it a few years ago, and I think we overexposed a couple of them. But I think we've learned from that, and I think the rotation is a good thing.
And that obviously rotation has been helped by. We have picked up a couple of injuries in the with Mike Cooper at the start of the season, and Havard's had a few knocks. Willie Icer now re-injured again has meant that Piers Paul has gone back to the second row. Be interesting to see whether Joe Shorrocks goes back out there and they carry on using Paul as a middle. I was very impressed with him in the middle. I had no criticism in the second row, but I was very impressed with him down the middle.
Yeah, I mean, Piers Paul, I didn't overly buy into the hype when he first came through. You know, if a player can do it for 2-3 seasons, that's the litmus test of whether a player is a good player, not whether he does it over 2-3 games. But certainly, I think he got a little bit lost last year and early this year with a lot of the offload stuff, being out wide,
Playing a bit as a centre.
Yeah, playing in between them two channels, you know, at second row and centre, and not maybe getting involved as much as what he should do, and then when he does get involved, feeling like he has to come up with a $64 million play. Whereas when he played in that middle about 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, when he first came back, what you got from him was a dozen drives and 14, 15, 16 tackles in his 30-minute spell.
They were all very effective.
Correct. He's a big lad. He takes some handling, and I just saw a glimpse with losing Isa. I just saw a glimpse again of that going and slightly out wider and not getting involved in the game and looking for a bigger type of play. So yes, if we can get Shorrocks back in there, in and around that squad, I'm not necessarily saying he should start or whatever, but if you get him back in and around that squad, with Ellis, Smithies maybe doing a bit of second row as well, if Ellis is playing at loose, I think what you're going to get, and December coming through, who is improving every time I see him.
He's getting better.
Yeah.
I'm very cautious because I don't want to throw him in early.
But, you know, if we can get 2 10-minute spells out of him every other game, you know, he's coming through. But I do think that, for me, in this team, Pierce playing more as what you youth today call middle, he's probably better for now than him out wide, because our centres are doing exactly what we need of them. The ball's getting out there, so... Yeah.
So, before we have a look at the tries, there was one little downside to this game. Obviously, Keikos going off with an injury. There's been question marks about whether he should be back at 6, whether he should be playing as a 9, whether he's got a future at Wigan. If so, what that future entails. for the 30, 40 minutes he was on the field, I was really impressed with him. I thought he came on, he looked busy, he looked active, and he just got us playing with a little bit more pace.
Yeah, I'd rather put what happens to Cade Cuss's future. I'd rather have that conversation at the end of the year. I'm sure the decision's been made already. These decisions aren't made in September and October. They're made in May, June, July. I feel sorry for Cuss. I think the first 3-4 months of last year, he was starting to be the six that we all wanted, and for numerous reasons, including the injury.
The Challenge Cup final where he dove for that ball, and I'll still blame Field for throwing it back inside.
Yeah,
I still said he should kick it.
Yeah,
just kick it and run.
The butterfly effect. One little thing happens, and another thing happens off the back of it, and you wish you could go back. But he's just since that point, he's never.
He's not got a run of games really.
No, and he's never quite been the same player. I mean, even though he was doing well up till the Challenge Cup final, I kept putting a word of caution out to the people around us. Just watch his defence. He's not the greatest in defence. Where Harry Smith has stepped up tenfold on his side of the on his side of the field. Cust was a little bit of an arm grabber, etc. But what he was doing as a six was he was giving us a little bit of what George gave us, which was that ability to straighten things up and test defences, very direct, and then play off the back of that. So he would run the ball, he would challenge people in and at the back of the play of the ball, he would straighten up our attack, etc. And then when defences got tightened to counter that, he'd then play off the back of it.
He had the ability to get into Smith and Field.
It's no doubt, and that since his injury, we've just not been able to settle in and around that position. And, the big conversation at Wigan for the last 3-4 months has been around, is it French at full-back, is it Field at full-back, who do we play, blah, blah, blah. On the wing, does Miski come in, etc. We can talk all we want about that. I'll say what I've been saying for 4 months. The problem is 6. We have to solve 6, and the rest will sort itself out. Same as I said 10 minutes ago, I want Cade Cuss fit. I want everybody fit because it challenges people. We've got away with Powell being out for 6-8. But with Powell being out for 6-8 weeks, we've got away with it because basically Brad O'Neill has been outstanding for the last 6-8 weeks. We're one injury away, whether that be Hooker, whether that be French at 6 as it currently stands, whether it be your full back or whether it be a winger or whether it be Harry Smith, correct? We're one injury away from needing a Cade Cuss. So if he's injured, it's unfortunate. Can we keep him fit for a run of 6-7 games if we needed to? Don't know, because his record over the last 3 months of last year plus the first 4 or 5 months of this year, he's not been great. But we need him. We need everybody available and fit.
More, but you can't complain about. I know it brings selection questions and who plays and who doesn't play and all that stuff, but having more bodies available, and which is why I'm glad to see Sam Powell played in the reserves last week.
Yeah.
Ideally, he would be playing again in the reserves this week and get another game under his belt. But having them players fit, it gives you options, because he can play 9, he can play in the halves if something happened, he could play 13 as he did for a spell.
Always been a big Sam Powell fan. The job he did taking over from Mickey Mack in 16 and early 17 until McIlroy got back, and then since then, I think
it's a tough job.
And he stepped into it fantastically and became a very good Super League player in his own right. Brad O'Neill has evolved into our number one dummy half. Totally agree with the decision, and Powell, a decision will have to be made about Powell moving up, but I want him fit. If Sam Powell doesn't play first team again this year and plays 10 reserve games, it means that our first team is doing exactly what it should be doing. It means that our 6, our 9, etc., our back row, because he could play a bit of 13, are fit and doing what they should do.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that Sampo will be giving it 100% in training, 100% off the field.
And leading on them standards.
Correct, and he'll be pushing it in and around the dressing room and around the training. And you know, I hope he has a part to play this year, but I hope it's a part that
Is picked
is rather than forced. Correct.
So, before we wrap up this bit, obviously a lot of tries scored. Abasmisi getting 4 tries. There was a couple that seemed like we tried to force it out wide to him.
Yeah, I will say something on this. Toby King gave him one on a play early on, but then didn't a few minutes later. And I hope the word got out there that we weren't going to try and manufacture a game where
someone gets 7 or 8.
Yeah, no, fine, getting 7 or 8, but he has to get them naturally.
Yeah.
I didn't want us doing something where we run through. There's 4 players in support. We ignore those 4 players because we're trying to find Miski.
Yeah.
It wasn't a type of game where if you get 10 tries, I'll let a fire. 8 tries as per French. Friday wasn't that type of game.
No.
You were doing it against an OKR reserve team. It didn't warrant us trying to manufacture something. On the Miski situation, I think 99% of the Wigan fans, appreciate everything that Miski's done this year. He had a bit of a rough start. I personally don't think he had a rough start because of his actual play. There were a couple of perceived errors that I think got over-exaggerated, overblown, as it usually does. And a few fans and a few social media kind of got into him at the beginning of last year. But what you can see, in my opinion, is the perfect third choice winger. In that he can come in and perform at a really high standard, do his job, etc.
And he looks for work.
Yeah, his workload.
You know how much we've talked about that.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the era of Charnley, Manfredi, Gelling, Sergison. Those 3 quarters performing a lot of the unseen work, dragging the ball out, the kick return, etc., getting you on the front foot. Plus, they still had a little bit of X factor to finish things off. I think we're as close now to having that as what we had back then.
Yeah.
You look at Marshall does his work. What an improved player he's been. Abbas Miski does a lot of that. When French does it with Field, when they play wing and full back, they do it in a slightly different way because the threat just means that the defence
stands off,
opens up a little bit wider. They don't overcommit because they know they can.
Feet very close to the line to try and land on the front and create some speed.
But
King and Wardle.
But Jake Wardle and particularly King have been fantastic in making those 2 drives every out of the first 4 in returning that ball and making us 10-15 metres, which gets us on that front foot. So I think we're as close to that era as we've been
for a while.
Abbas Miski's been a definite positive this year.
Yeah.
So.
The other one was obviously Jay Field. Got a hat-trick in 7 minutes. Doing what... We talked about the conversation about who should play full-back and who should play 6 and all that stuff. My opinion is that Jay should be at full-back because of his engine and how he is everywhere. And he effectively got that and showed that again in this game by just backing absolutely everything up. As soon as there's any break, he's flying on the inside.
Yeah, listen, I've said for the last 3-4 months when this debate has been rife in pubs and clubs and at the game.
RL fans.
Yeah, RL fans, Twitter. I don't do Twitter or Facebook, whatever, but you know what I mean? In those debating situations, I will not argue with anybody who has an opinion over French or Field at full-back. I think they're both tremendous in slightly different ways. Yeah. What I will say is Bevan's a better 6 and Bevan's a better winger. Now, for the team, that means to me, Field has to play full-back. Not has to, but should play full-back. What I say as over French as a full-back is aerobic contribution. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
There
were times when French was at full-back and Field played 6 that French looked a bit fatigued and just he stood in the line for a couple of seconds and Field went and run around.
It stood out for me last year with Field at full back that what you would see is him overlapping on the left, and he would either get his hands on the ball and give it, or he'd get his hands on the ball and make a bit of a break, and then they'd play the ball, and he'd be over on the right, chiming in. And we Wembley's a case in point last year, or Tottenham last year in the Challenge Cup final. He made 3 tries through not touching the ball.
Yeah.
He was that option out the back.
Because Ricky Latelli stepped up on him the first time for his try.
Yes.
Where he then backs up.
In the first we went short on Morgan Smithies.
Yeah.
When players outside
had already
slid off the field. And I think what he provides is probably in attack 40, 50, 60, 70 pushes into that defence that makes defences change and alter. French is slightly different. He's so dynamic with the ball in his hand, and you can't.
There's a case to say that he's a better ball player and he's better with the ball in his hand.
Yeah, he's more likely to skip and
beat
with his footwork and beat a man and go through a gap, etc. Probably just better than Field at that. They've both got decent hands when they're trying to find the wingers. They do it in a slightly different way. I think Field is a little bit more orthodox, where French is a little bit more razzle-dazzle. He does something,
You could say with the try that one of Miski's tries at the weekend, where he makes that unbelievable break and somehow manages to pop the ball back up on the inside.
On the inside with a no-look pass. He's tried no-look passes, but he's also thrown a couple of interceptions at key moments. But I do think that Field just gives you that aerobic nature where his contributions 50, 60 pushes through in support, in defence, in attack. Where Brad O'Neill does his little bit of a run, where Mago goes, where KPP as a middle might be playing there. You get one pass away, 2 passes away, and invariably he's there. I think he's better than French at that. But again, I don't want to get into bagging a player.
Yeah,
because you're trying to prove a point on another player.
They're both two very different players.
They are both fantastic full-backs. We know that Jai struggled in defence and was targeted at six, and we know that Bevan can play wing as good, if not better, than anybody else in the country. And French's defence at 6 has been outstanding.
Yeah, I've been very impressed with that.
He's definitely growing into the role. So yeah, listen.
I think that's what's been brave from Pete is that he's stuck with it. There was a lot of criticism after losing losing the semi-final, and we need a 6. Cuss should be in. Hampshire should play. Drop this player. Drop that player. That he's almost just said, I'm sticking. Well, this is what we said was right. I still think it's right, and I'm sticking with it. At French at 6, he made the change earlier on in the season where he moved French to 6 rather than Jai. And I'm glad that he's just stuck with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to that thing. If French is playing 6 in place of Cust, if he's a fit Cust, if he's playing 6 at French at 6 in place of Hampshire, then that says to me he's doing his job. And it's the best option. Because we have those other options available and we're choosing, or Matt Pete is choosing not to use them. He's choosing Abbas Miski to play wing rather than move French there and bring somebody else in at 6. So he must be happy with that because we have those options available.
It takes time, doesn't it, to build them partnerships?
Listen, what I will say is the age-old saying, all the experts are on the side of the field, yeah? You lose one game and everybody will tell you everything that you've done wrong, yeah? It's not necessarily that you did something wrong. It may be just, who's to say that you play a different way and you don't get beat even easier. So it's very easy to start looking for scapegoats and looking for things that could have changed a defeat into a victory. They never actually tell you that change could have made that defeat even worse. The key bit is having players available, having options. Personally, me and you have spoke about this. We've sat in pubs with friends of ours and whatever. I would, if we could solve the sixth problem, French would still be on the wing
Yeah.
for me, because I think he gives us far more
strike
power than what Miski does. I know he doesn't do the
meters
meters the same, but I think he provides a different threat. You kick downtown to
field
and French, and defensively, he must be a nightmare.
And you only have to look at like the games last year with which I think of it was at the end. Channel 4 we played Salford at home.
Yeah.
French is on the wing and
and he runs that way.
One dummy.
Yeah, but you can't sit here, and I'm not going to be one of them. I never have been. Who tries to point out the deficiencies in Miski or the deficiencies in Marshall, which I can touch on a little bit. That exposes them or tries to make them out to not be the players that they are. Just to kind of defend my opinion that I think something should happen. I think what I'm saying about that is you have to look with Marshall. Defensively, he tries to solve problems that don't need solving.
Yeah.
Last year, Magic Weekend, 20 seconds left on the clock, Jake Bibby gets pelters. What people forget, or what people didn't notice, is that he was left 4-on-1 because Liam Marshall, left winger, he's 30 metres behind play and 30 metres in field playing full back, trying to defend the play previous.
Yeah.
Which completely exposed Bibby out on that side. Now, Liam Marshall has done that once a game for the last 20 games. He tries to solve a problem that doesn't necessarily, it's not his problem to solve.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to over-egg that, and I'm not going to over-criticise him for it, because the rest of his game is fantastic. His work out of defence, his finishing.
Under the high ball. I was always concerned when he first came on the scene.
Yeah.
About his under the high ball, and he's
massively but he's improved so much. He's definitely improved so much. So much so that the three that he was in competition with, Budgie, Davis, and Manfredi. Unfortunately, Manfredi's not with us anymore due to the injury situation, who I would have thought was probably the best of all four. But actually, no, Marshall stands the equal, if not better than the other two. The lad's done fantastic.
While we talk about that, and we'll wrap it up in a second on this bit, but I was having a look at the try scoring lists, and obviously we haven't got a Tom Johnston or a Charlie who's on 23, 24 tries this year, but we've actually got 4 of the top 8 try scorers in Super League. Marshall's on 18, Abbas Miski's on 17, Bevan has got 15, and Jai has got 12. There's a lot of threat everywhere across that field, and Tommy King and Jake Wardle.
I was just going to say
King
and Wardle have contributed. They've not been the try a game strike centres.
Yeah.
I don't think you're ever going to get that from King. I think if he contributed 10, 12 tries in a season, the rest of his game supplements all of that. Wardle has stepped up with his work rate. Maybe his try return could be a touch better than that. But what he has done is he's scored on 2 opportunities when they've come to him. This week against OKR, he showed that ball, stepped inside. The week before against Lee.
Yeah, when French ended up backing up on the inside.
Yeah. He has good hands. He looks a natural in that position. Yeah. Early on in the season, the St Helens Good Friday situation. So Wardle has been a very good buy. Has he been outstanding? He's probably not hit those heights yet. He seems like a quiet guy. You don't see him being over exuberant and jumping around. He seems just this guy who's happy to play the game and keep quiet or whatever. But he's going about everything he does effectively in a very classy way. So, yeah.
Well, we were going to talk about Hull KR, but I think we should leave that till we go on to the Challenge Cup final, how both teams have approached that. But a good win overall. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have a look at the rest of Super League. Thank you. So, thank you for coming back after that quick break. We're now going to have a look at the rest of Super League. A lot's gone on. An awful lot more's gone on off the field than probably on it in terms of news, so we're going to wrap that in all together. We're going to start off at Castleford. Huddersfield winning 28 points to nil. 14-0 at half time, so won both halves 14. Sam Halsall, next we're going to get in a hat trick. Chris McQueen scoring, Cudjoe scoring, and Adam Milner. Ollie Russell only kicking 2 goals, but Huddersfield looking better, but Cass are very, very poor at the moment, and that's obviously led to the removal of Andy Last.
Yeah, I think we can sum this up very quickly. Huddersfield, they're not the team they were 10 weeks ago. They're not the easy beats of 10 weeks ago. So I'm quite pleased that Saints have got this outstanding game that they have to catch up on. So that in effect could be a positive for our season. Certainly, even if Saints get the win, Huddersfield are going to stand up to them and
make them play.
So, you know, Huddersfield, are they very, very big outsiders? Yes, they are, but they could be a little bit of a dark horse. Could cause an upset round about playoff time. Yeah. So there's certainly a better prospect than a Warrington or Salford at the moment.
While we're talking about Huddersfield, they've stuck with the same spine. We've talked about the rotation, and it's probably 6 or 7 weeks now that they've stuck with Connor, Lola here, and Oliver Russell. I like Russell. I think he's a good player.
What I will say is the chopping and changing wasn't doing him any good.
No.
Whatever your thoughts are of who should have played 6, who should play 9, who should play full back, whatever, it's opinions. Sticking to something, getting the best out of it, giving it time seems to be working. And there's no doubt Chris Hill was again fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, it was only 2-3 years ago that somebody said, you know, maybe we could give him 2 years, and we thought, oh, he's getting on a bit. But you know what? 2-3 years down the line, he's still at that point where you could still see him doing a good job for another 2 years for somebody. But they definitely
signed an extension, hasn't he?
I think so. They definitely are much improved, and they look a lot more like the Huddersfield that we thought we were going to get.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they're at that level yet.
No.
They're getting there.
Yeah. So we can put a wrap round Huddersfield for that. With regards to Cass, well, you know, they took 6 weeks to announce what everybody thought, which was that they were going to give Andy Last the job.
Which was an absolute joke for them, 6 weeks.
Yeah, and then what did they do? They give him 10 weeks and then get rid as if that's the problem. The problem is that they've just got a poor squad.
They've got a poor playing squad, and I think the fact that Wakefield have beaten us, beaten Leeds,
well, I think
brought in Fafita, brought in Luke Gale.
Yeah, what you've got now is a situation where Wakefield were dead and buried. They were gone 10 weeks ago, and then they found some life out of somewhere. Fafita, he must be a great person behind the scenes, and
we've said how much Fafita has made Kevin Proctor a better player, Renoff Attorney a better player.
Yeah. Whatever the detail of that is, they are a better team, and they're the ones coming on with fresh legs. In this last 6 weeks of the season, they look like the team that want to play these last 6 games. Cass look like they've completely run out of steam. So what have they done? They've basically sacked the coach, tried to bring somebody else in, announced Blake Austin, so, you know, on the top of Gareth Widdop being a 34-year-old half-back, and etc. They've brought in another 34-year-old half-back. Will it do a job for them to the end of the season? Maybe it could, but it also, for me, with both these teams, because obviously they've done it with Fafita, they've done it with Gale, both these teams are a perfect example or a perfect positive for franchising, because all they've done is gone short term. Yeah. Both clubs over the last 12 months have just gone short term. And they're not looking to bring in those players in key positions. We're not talking about the occasional centre or back rower who comes on and does 10 minutes, and you know, they're basically looking at the next 3 games. That's all they're looking at. They're not building. Now, I'll give Wakefield some credit for what they're doing off the field. I believe they've got some new investment, and they certainly look like the team that are more vibrant at the moment. Cass.
How big's that game going to be? Cass Wakey.
Yeah, and that's the opposite of franchising. Everybody will look forward to that 80 minutes, and it'll be exciting and whatever. Very much like going back 6-7 years ago and watching the Lee against Catalan £1 million game. It was
a brilliant game.
It was brilliant, and the build up, whatever. But as both sets of officials for both clubs said after the game, people's livelihoods were on the line. You can't build for the future without taking risks. Putting the livelihood of the club at risk moving forward just because you don't know what. Spectacle. But it's going to be a big game at this moment in time.
It's that Wakefield, isn't it?
Yeah. Will Cass suddenly find that new coach injection, the Blake Austin effect?
Well, Blake Austin has the ability to win a game, doesn't he?
Blake Austin's been very good the last 10-12 weeks. And I know the next game that we're going to discuss is the Leeds League game.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned before that you wanted to have a bit of a chat about the Leeds situation, Gary Etherington, etc. So it leads nicely into that. But Blake Austin has certainly been one of Leeds' better performers, unfortunately for us, since the sending off at Wigan, when they were down to 12 men, and basically he ran the game.
Yeah, he ran the game.
Yeah, he bossed it. It's a short-term decision.
The only other issue I have with it, though, and I only found this out yesterday, is Cass play Leeds, and he can't play against them. Last game of the season, I think it is. That'd be a massive situation to be in.
Yeah, but for Cass, he's an extra player.
Yeah.
So he's not replacing a player that's already there. So he's going to be an extra for 5 games. He's not really a loss for that last game. So,
well, let's go on to that game then. Leeds versus Lee. Lee winning 13 points to 6. Tries from Tom Amon and Edwin Apape, Jared O'Connor scoring for Leeds. It's a difficult one to discuss, Leeds, really, because I grew up and they were one of the powerhouses of Super League, and everyone wanted. They were winning grand finals and winning cups and winning World Club challenges. So to see them in this position, and the position that they've been probably the last 4 or 5 years, where they've not been that competitive, is a bit of a surprise, really, for me. I've not really lived in a time where Leeds haven't been competitive for a long spell.
Well, what I would say is I'm the opposite. So, starting to watch the game in the late 70s, yes, they had the occasional cup success.
Yeah.
And I mean very occasionally. But actually, from about 1980, when the whole teams and Widnes were the top dogs, and then Wigan obviously came through, Leeds have occasionally challenged, but they were always the bridesmaids.
Yeah.
So, naturally, in my DNA, I don't worry about Leeds. Of course, they had that 10-year period from 04, 05 through to 15, 16, and whatever it was, 15 in particular, where they were fantastic. But that's been the exception in my 40-odd years of watching. That 10 years is the exception. The other 30, they've been distinctly average. I can't quite 100% nail my colours to the mast on this. There's a lot of things I like about what's going on at Leeds, and there's a lot of things I don't like about what's going on at Leeds. Bill Cole wrote something on one of his blogs or whatever it was the other day. I just saw it at the Economy Eye where he put down that Leeds had lost 6-7 games by 4 points or less.
They've lost 2 in Golden Point.
Yeah, and they'd be comfortably sat in 4th or 5th. Yeah. And I can also look at it and say that they've been bang average at points. Again, a club built around a spine at 1, 6 and 7, where their average age must be 33, 34. And
Well, it was Myler, Caesar, Austin, and Jared O'Connor.
yeah, and Jared O'Connor looks like a
He looks
real
like
player.
a really, really good talent.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that 1, 6, and 7, and then you look and say to yourself, 20 years ago, when that great Leeds team started to break through, you've also had to realise that you had, when Maguire was coming through, Danny Maguire, when Rob Burrows was coming through, etc. You had your Andrew Dunnemans that were the safe player, the good, the guy that organised everything around it, and they were coming behind it.
Yeah, learning
Now,
that side of the game.
you look currently, and you think to yourself, will the players that are sat behind Myler, etc., so they played that Hooley.
Well, Hooley played full-back. Johnson played in the halves with Caesar.
Yeah, as Sinfield is
Sinfield was on the bench.
on the bench. Finding the right balance. Have they played enough games? Are they going to be thrown into the...
Well, if the talks of Caesar being off at the end of the year, apparently I've heard it's a done deal to the West Tigers.
Yeah.
I can't see a world where they don't bring in a half-back.
Well, what I will say is, look, they've lost 5, 6, 7 players. You know, Walters is going, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. So you look at their losses, and you keep hearing from Gary Etherington that they're in the market for X, they're in the market for Y, they're in the market for Z, and then X, Y, and Z go and sign for somebody else.
Yeah.
You do wonder, where are these players going to come from? Have they got something fantastic lined up? Because financially and off the field, they are they're a powerhouse. Have they got something fantastic lined up? Or are they going to throw the trust in Hooley, Sinfield, Johnson, and try and build a team for the next 5 years?
And maybe ignore the development over the next 2 or 3.
To get the benefit of that, which Leeds did very well 20 years ago. Can they do it again? No. But what I will say is Leeds have struggled through what I call new stadium disease. It happened at Wigan. We moved to a new stadium. Your eyes on other things. We were leaving Central Park, etc., etc., and we fell into a malaise where you just kind of took your eye off the ball behind the scenes, and
It takes a long time to catch that up.
Yeah.
Missing a year there costs you 3 or 4 in the long run.
that goes to a conversation I had in 2008 when we went to Australia, and there were a couple of St Helens fans who we become good friends with, and I remember saying to John, when you move to your new stadium and you leave Knowsley Road, you'll take your eye off the ball. You'll take your eye off the ball of the playing side of things. And they went there, thought they got a new stadium, everything would be fine. And they had, between 2011 and 2018, until Albrook came in late 17, early 18, they had 6-7 years of, okay, they got a grand final and we can talk till we're blue in the face about that. But they were basically in a malaise.
Yeah.
And you look at Leeds, they've done all the stuff off the field. The stadium is out of this world. It's one of my favourite away games, obviously apart from the West Stand fiasco. But you look at the stadium, it feels like a place you want to play rugby league in. It has that big game feel.
It's understandable why they get an international game all the time. And semi-finals.
But you look, and despite having some real... Obviously, you've got Newman, unfortunate about the injuries. You've got...
Cam Smith.
I
really like Cam Smith.
Outstanding.
Reece Martin.
Well, I'm looking at the younger players. You're looking at players there that have got 9-10 years ahead of them. Jared O'Connor, Ulroyd. I like Ulroyd. Oletsky's really young, so he's got a lot left in him. Despite that, I can't see much else. And you wonder, for me, we're losing Lehman last year. We're losing Sam Walters this year. A couple of the older heads going. You're looking and thinking, have they got 5 players that they can bring in from outside that's going to immediately make an impact, or are they going to go long term and give up over the next couple of years? for the benefit of the 3, 4, 5 years after that.
Them two conversations together, really. I've seen a lot of Leeds fans not happy with what's going on, and I've seen people saying that are they settling for mediocrity? Are they settling for that? There's no aspirations from Gary Etherington. He takes a lot of the criticism. I heard on very good reserve that they were going to get Adam Clune from the Newcastle Knights.
Well, they're not getting him, are they?
They're not getting him.
No. So what I'm saying is, you will certainly, and it's very much the case at Wigan, the vociferous minority want immediate answers. Yeah? And whether Leeds are going to give them the immediate answers by signing 3, 4, 5 players, that may very well be their second choice players because they couldn't get the first choice players, just to keep that quiet and satisfy that vocal minority, or are they going to take a longer term approach to it and ride a bit of a storm now because Rowan Smith might be looking at 2025, 26 rather than looking at 23 and 24. I'm not saying which is the right way about going about it.
I don't think there is a right answer. If they win the grand final last year, it saves a lot of pressure.
Leeds' mistakes were made in 2017, not in 2022. That what happened at Leeds with the leaving of Sinfield, Kelly Luluai, Peacock,
all within that 2 years,
Maguire,
from 15 to 17.
17 Burrows, and there's a lot more to it than that. You know, players that we probably did, Jamie Jones, Buchanan, but players that we may not necessarily see as standout players, but provided so much solidity and knew the system. Yeah, Joel Moon. They let everybody go in a 12, 18-month period, and probably similarities to what happened at the end of Wayne's tenure, when we lost a lot and we kind of like started a new era, and it didn't just quite click. It didn't just quite click for us.
Yeah.
You know, with Erdacre, Bullock coming in, blah, 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 you know. And we ended up losing a few older heads. A similar thing is going on at Leeds. But you can't get away from the feeling that Gary Etherington knows it all. He's always had this attitude that he's the kingpin, the number one, the blah, blah, blah. And the crown's definitely slipped with the Leeds fans and Gary Etherington.
Yeah. And
maybe he just thought that it would happen, that at some point they would get it right. But they very much now were Warrington are going down, which is it didn't work, so we'll try something different. It didn't work, so we'll try something different. And they're on the third rebuild here now, Leeds.
Yeah, with Agar. Who else was there in between it before Agar?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it's not just the coach; it's that squad of players. And what I will say is that they either have to buy into Rowan Smith, those younger players, for the next 3-4 years, and give them time, or they go full out, try and solve it all in one big hit, major surgery, inject 5-6 players into that squad, and look for immediate success.
Well, with the Rowan Smith conversation, and I know we've talked a lot about Leeds here, but his comments over Austin, that he didn't know that Austin was leaving, and he woke up to a text saying that he was gone.
Yeah, well, that Austin's. I have seen the interview. There's certainly an argument to say that Austin was out of order, saying things out in public that should be probably kept behind closed doors, etc. But that's a sign of an unhappy player. Is it a sign of an unhappy squad? You have to remember, Austin's not got 10 years of rugby left in him. He's only got 12, 18 months, 2 years left in him as a player. So potentially he wants success now, and he wants things done in a certain way. And he's definitely very vociferous about what he wants as a player. So maybe for the best of the squad, it might be better that he moves on. But it's understanding the dynamics of what's going on behind the scenes. Jamie Jones Buchanan in the coverage last week didn't want to talk about it, got asked directly certain questions, and he skipped those questions.
I think he has to, doesn't he?
Yeah, Rowan Smith gave a little bit of an answer, but then
It's a lot of pressure for Rowan Smith getting asked these questions every week.
yeah. Listen, Leeds are a big club, you know.
Massive city.
We talked earlier on about your perception of Leeds as a club. I would describe it as before the 2003, 2004 Leeds. For me, we always described them as the Man City of rugby league. You know, the Newcastle, these big clubs that didn't win things. Now Man City, through whatever means, and Newcastle are now coming through. You know, they're turning into big clubs. Gary Etherington hit jackpot. He hit the jackpot in early 2000s and created a dynasty for 10 years, you know, not too dissimilar to the one that Wigan created in the mid-80s, late 80s. What I would say is can he create another? And, you know...
That's the question to be seen.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on from Leeds and we'll go over to Hull, where Hull played Wakefield. Hull FC winning 42-4. It's interesting looking at Wakefield. Obviously, we know about the troubles that they had at the start of the season. But in the last 7 games, they've won 4. Having beat Warrington, us, Salford and Leeds, but all at home. The games that they've played away from home, they've lost in that time. They've not won a game away from home. It's very difficult when a team's so up and down compared the home form to their away form. But whether that's just because the crowd at Wakefield gets behind them and they're now back in the team.
Listen, I would also say don't underestimate Hull's improvement.
Hull have improved massively.
Hull have improved massively since Good Friday. Tony Smith, there's a coach that isn't in it for the short term.
Yeah.
A lot of the good stuff coming out of Hull KR, don't underestimate the foundations that Tony Smith laid the previous 2-3 years. He will do that at Hull.
Yeah.
Whether he gets them to being top dogs after 30-40 years of not being is a different matter, but he plays the long game, Tony Smith.
Yeah.
He will change the culture, he will change what goes on off the field, etc., and he will produce good players. Hull will be a good team in the next couple of years. So they've improved.
Well, we backed him from the start that he was going to get it right and he was going to get the right people in.
Yeah.
And
He's a very good rugby league man.
Yeah.
What I will say is you can't read too much into one result. You know, they've blown Wakefield away and were 30 points up, give or take. Wakefield may just have to say, look, cue on the rack. Let's get through this game and we come back next week or the week after and we go again and try. Wakefield know they've got to win another 2-3 games, particularly the Cass game. If they win the Cass game and then get another win from somewhere, Cass are going to find it very difficult to get 3 out of the last 6.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Wakefield's running. Just have a quick breakdown. They've got Cass at home as the next game. Salford away. That's winnable.
It is.
With the form that Salford are in. But then they play St Helens at home, Catalans at home, Lee away and Hull KR at home on the last game of the season. There's
2 games there that stand out as your targets, aren't there? There's 2 games, and them are the next 2 games, are they?
Salford, Castleford, and then Salford.
Yeah, they won't be looking much further beyond that. They'll reassess after that. If they get those 2 wins there and Cass have 2 losses, they'll sit there with a better points difference, blah, 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 look at those last 4...
They were momentarily off bottom on points difference.
Yeah, but they'll look at those last 4 games and think to themselves, we might need 1. Cass will be looking and thinking, out of our last 4, we need 3.
Yeah. So, obviously there's been an appointment at Wakefield this week, announced yesterday. It's going to tie in with the appointments that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, but Sean Long announced as the assistant for the rest of this year and 2024. It seemed certain that he was going to Warrington. We'll talk about Warrington in a little bit.
Well, I'll update the joke from the 80s of more clubs than Jack Nicklaus to more clubs than Tiger Woods. Longy seems to go in. He seems to be very well thought of
In the coaching thing, yeah.
seems to
Keep
get
getting these
jobs, and then does 12 months and then moves on for another challenge.
Really weird when you look at James Ford as well. So he was the assistant at Wakefield, left, to the director of rugby at Featherstone. He's now the head coach of Featherstone. And Longie's moved the other way, gone from head coach of Featherstone to...
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe Wakefield. I slightly praised them earlier on for having a little bit more of a long-term view on things. But they did what they had to do with Fafita and had that massive lift. Maybe Longy can assist them over the next 6 games to get 3 wins, 2-3 wins, and
If he can, he's done his job, hasn't
I'd be more worried if they announced him and give him a 2.5-year contract.
Yeah.
I'd be questioning that and saying what's going on. But obviously,
This
they
year
know,
and
like
next
we
year.
know, that he's probably going to end up just down the M6 here in 2024. So I'd be a little bit more worried if they did that. It's 6 games, end of the season. Yeah, it
See
is.
what
It is
happens
what it is.
Well, let's go on to Warrington then. Warrington play Catalans at home. Catalans winning 30 points to 10. I want to give a lot of credit to Catalans. They are probably the team to beat at the moment. They've got quite a lead in the league. It's up to 4 points now. Some very impressive rugby from Catalans. They're travelling better than what they usually do, which I think is a good sign for them. But Warrington, they just can't get it right at all.
I think Catalans is the easier conversation. They're doing everything correctly. Steve McNamara
He's really invested in French
he
rugby.
took a lot of stick from people off the back of the 2013 World Cup and blah blah blah. I've always liked him. I've always thought that he's, a good coach. I think he does a lot of the stuff he doesn't look for quick solutions, quick answers.
He's really
He
invested
builds
in French
things.
rugby.
Yeah. So I think he's done his own work. You have to remember he's been around the coaching game 20 odd years now. He's not, even though he's relatively young, he's not just come onto the scene.
Yeah, he's not the new fish, is he?
Yeah, so he's kind of like he goes about things very well. Catalans are a surprise because at the moment they are everything that they've not been for the previous 15, 20 years. They're very consistent. They're very boring, if for want of another word, in that they go about the processes very well. If a player A gets injured, player B comes in and does exactly the same job.
I think they've got the right mix of organisation.
yeah.
Pierce, McAlorum.
Pierce is fantastic. McAlorum is doing what
he's-
McAlorum does.
They've got the fleur of like an Arta Morg.
Yeah.
The centres.
Got good centres. They've got 2 great wingers that can
Sam
finish
out the
things
back.
off. Yeah, Sam still just organising and conducting things like you
Playing
said.
in a dinner court.
You look at the forwards, and you don't stand there and immediately say, "Oh, he is outstanding. He's fantastic." But they've got 10, 12 forwards who are all 8 out of 10 every week. And they go about the jobs and they don't make mistakes. They don't miss tackles. They do
They do the hard work.
Yeah.
They do the hard work, and they let Pierce and they let Sam, they let Arta Morg.
Yes. Now, the old Catalans didn't have that, but they had that spark in them that on any given day they could throw the ball about and be genius and mercurial.
Beat anyone
They had
by
that,
40.
Yeah, they had that 5th gear. My question, and it's the only question about Catalan nowadays, is they've been running in 4th gear all season. Have they got a 5th gear when it matters?
Yeah.
No, we're going to find out in a couple of weeks when we got Catalan. Yeah. We're going to find out when we hit them playoff games. Do they need a 5th gear? Will some of the injury problems at Wigan, at St Helens, potentially Lee pick up a couple of injuries? They haven't got the squad to back that up. Potentially, 4th gear might do it. But if Saints find that, what we know Saints can do, if we can get into the playoffs,
90% of what we can play at.
Yeah, but 90% plus, we know we've got that bit of extra with French, Field,
Saints with Wells,
Wardle,
Dodd.
you know, will they be able to lift? But what you've got to do so far in the season is give Catalans a great deal of credit. After the 2021 grand final appearance, they dipped a little bit last year, and they were a bit like the old Catalans, hit and miss. But this year,
they've come back 10 times better.
They've been 8.5 down out of 10 every week.
On the other side of that coin, Warrington, they were a 10 out of 10 at the start of the season. They'd won 8 from 8. They'd wrapped up the league. Everything was perfect. You can go and have a look at all the videos of Darryl Powell and all the things that happened in that early couple of months.
How long have we got? How long have we got?
Not long enough.
Well, that's it.
You could talk for 3-4 hours on this. You easily could.
And the rest.
Because they brought in players. Paul Vaughan, I like Vaughan. He's a good player. Dufty.
Well, listen, this may be Captain Hindsight. Sat in a bar in Tenerife with Mick Broad, with a friend at the beginning of 2022, and a Warrington fan was in the same bar with us, and his words were, "We brought Darryl Powell in. He's going to change this. He's getting rid of all the deadwood. He's going to do what he's going to do, etc., etc." And the phrase that we used back was, "It's like putting a corner shop manager in charge of a Tesco." Yeah. Wait till he gets rid of all the deadwood. Well, he got rid of the deadwood, and they're all playing well elsewhere.
Oh, look at that. Jack Hughes, Josh Charnley.
Yeah. Mike Cooper.
Yeah.
Etc. etc.
Chris Hill.
Yeah. And what did he do? He brought in particular 5 forwards that were all the wrong side of 30. And
they were Vaughan, Cassiano,
Dudson,
Maguire, Josh Maguire.
Yeah, etc. And what I remember saying at the time, he's going to have to get it right immediately, or he's going to have to rebuild again. And he didn't get it right in 2022. A lot of people say, well, he had to be given time. He was appointed in April 2021. So every one of those players in 2022, he knew
was going to be there for a year.
Correct. He oversaw the signing of George Williams. He knew that he was going to be the coach the following year. He knew about Matt Dufty. He knew about every one of those signings. So Peter Matotia,
Oliver Holmes,
Minikin, etc. And you look at Warrington and you think to yourself, in early 2022, he oversaw those players and he was being given another 12 months, right? They should have figured out there was something going wrong then, because that was his team.
Yeah.
95% that was his team.
Yeah.
Now, what do I think about Warrington this year? He had to perform in those first 6 to 8 weeks. He had to put all his eggs in one basket. And as you say, they were the champions in April, end of March. Yeah. But maybe all that effort, maybe all that...
Can't keep getting up for every Super League game.
Well...
It's very hard to get yourself up for it.
What it stinks of to me is they haven't got the support network behind that first 13, behind that first 17,
well, that
to
goes
ride
down
a problem.
That goes down to the comments that he made when they played us in the Challenge Cup. I have to start Sam Cassiano. What do you mean you have to start him? You chose to play James Harrison, wearing number 8 on the back of his shirt. One of your starting props. You're playing him at second row because you don't have another second rower. Josh Maguire's obviously moved on. You let Thomas McHaley move on and then bring him back.
Pressure does different things to different people. And a wise person once said to me that pressure, stress, you revert to type. You revert to what you know. And Powell goes the other way that Sean Wayne does.
Yeah.
Sean Wayne wanted to give those young lads a chance.
Yeah.
And he would trust them. And if under pressure, he'd probably trust them even more. Powell has reverted, a bit Brian Noble-esque. He's reverted to what he knows. And what that's done is it's basically ostracised all of his youth
Yeah.
because they're looking and thinking, right, what do you think if you're Riley Dean? What do you think if you're
Well, we
Lucas
sent him out on loan and brought him back.
Green?
Lucas
Yeah.
Green's been on the bench 4 times and
Yeah.
not got on the field.
Yeah, because you play players out of position. You'll play Peter Matoti at 6. You know, some of those decisions around that time. At one point, I think Thulis was outstanding for a couple of weeks, and then he dropped in.
I feel I think he's a
Yeah,
player.
some good players, but it just, to me, stinks of Warrington. It's just very Warrington.
Yeah.
The short-term decisions. The answer is a star name, and I know we're going to come on to this now. Their answer is he's gone by somebody. At the same time, Wigan played Warrington just before Easter, and we beat them at their place. It was very interesting looking at, I look at RL fans. I don't go on Twitter and Facebook, but looking at RL fans and what you thought, they were having a bit of an injury crisis at that time. Yeah, they had 18 million players out or whatever it was, and their answer was, "Let's go and buy, let's go and buy, let's go and buy." Wigan were having an injury crisis. We'll go into Warrington under the same kind of cloud with injuries. And what did you hear from the majority of Wigan fans? Let's play in December.
Harvey Hill.
Let's play Harvey Hill.
Joe Shorrock's playing at 6.
Correct. We were pushing from within, and that culture leads to that kind of thinking. There are people now that want us to play Eckersley, Douglas, play more in December, more of Hill, etc. Well, with Warrington, you've just got this short-termism of
and go and get him Matty Nicholson.
yes,
Must be.
yeah. The famous saying. So
I look at Warrington, and
I mean,
if you were to look at 1 to 13, there is an argument that the 1 to 13 is as strong as anyone else in Super League.
I don't personally buy into that. Strangely, I looked at the 3 quarters, and I just go, meh. Stefan Ratchford. I was never his biggest fan, if I'm being honest with you. When he was a good player, he's 34, 35 now. But he's what's he going to do? Peter
But what I mean
Matoti
by that
playing.
is if you look at the 1 to 13, there are some quality players in there.
There are some good players.
Dusty's an NRL player. George Williams was one of the best halfbacks in the world for a long time and still is. He's England captain. Drinkwater was a very good player at Catholic.
Losing Drinkwater's probably been the biggest
issue.
issue.
But Vaughan,
Darryl Clark.
James Harrison, I like.
Yeah.
The only youth that they've really stuck with is Danny Walker. I think they get him from Widnes.
Yeah. But if you look at those, like I said, the 3 quarters was the thing for me. When I looked at the centres, I used to think they don't worry me. I don't even lose 1 second of energy thinking about what's going on in those centres. Yeah, they're going to have the odd individual moment, but they don't worry me. But the key bit is what are they going to do when they get 4, 5, 6 injuries? And what they did was they just threw the bag up, and wherever things landed,
They just went with it.
correct. And they didn't have,
That was going to be my next point.
or they didn't trust. Not that they didn't have, they didn't necessarily trust the next 4 or 5 cabs off that rank. And I always do it. When you look at the squad at the start of the year, Wigan, you start looking down at numbers 27, 28, 29,
Well, Ian Thornley
30.
was Hampshire wearing 28.
Yeah. But you're looking and you're going, you know what? We've got 2 teams that we can put out there. I always look at Warrington and I go 1 to 17, 18, 19, and then I start running out of patience even looking at what's going on. Because not that those players at 20, 21, 22 are no good. They're probably good young prospects. But you just know that Warrington are not going to trust them. They're not going to give them game time.
And let's have a look at who they brought in. They brought in Lachlan Fitzgibbon, a second rower. Not really, again, trusting anyone coming through. I don't know what they've got in that position, but...
Well, listen. We look at the last 2 weeks at Warrington and Powell had to go, I
thought he should have gone a couple of weeks ago when he sat in that box.
Yeah. I thought he should have gone start of the year when he put that hat on, when he put his magic hat on and round Catalan and whatever. But what I will say is, we all thought, I was worried that Warrington were going to do something un-Warrington-like and say, we'll get the right man for the next 5 years. And if they'd have got Holbrook, you'd probably see me worried a little bit about what he was going to do and where he was going to rip the bit behind the scenes. There was talk that Wayne had been offered the job, and you know, and no, straight from the horse's mouth, he was offered it before Darryl Powell, but didn't take it because they wanted. They weren't prepared to let him to continue with the England job and whatever. So you know, okay, that decision. What you know is that those guys, like a Tony Smith, would go right at the floor level, the foundations of what builds that club.
And them two that you name would dominate absolutely everything in that club. What the academy is doing to what the everyone, the reserves, the under-21s, the 16s.
But what Warrington have done in the last week,
let's say the appointment of Sam Burgess,
is they've done a Warrington.
And it might work. It could work. He's very, very well thought of in the NRL that he could be a head coach. But he's not got the experience to fix this, in my personal opinion.
Whether it works, whether he has got the experience to do it or not, it stinks of short-termism.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is they could easily have looked at it and said, we'll bring you in as number 2, Sam. We'll put somebody in place for 2 years.
At Holbrook.
Yeah, we'll ask you to, you know, kind of like grow into that role, understand the club, and we want you for 2025, 26 onwards, etc. They've gone for the big name. And can he...
Do you think that's because Holbrook turned them down? From my understanding, he was
close.
He was close, and he booked plane flights. He was that close. Well, he's been turned down.
Well, possibly. And suddenly, pressure, as I said, does strange things to people. What have Warrington done? They've reverted to type. The only thing that was missing from announcing Sam Burgess was Wolfie on a go-kart, driving it round Buckingham Palace, you know, with a big sign saying we've got Sam Burgess. That's the only thing that was missing, because it's very Warrington what they've done. And, you know, what's the old saying? The definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You know, it is what it is. It's very Warrington. It'll bring some glamour. We know that
a lot of press.
We know that the headlines at the beginning of 2024 are going to be the return of Sam Burgess. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Whatever. Maybe Sam Burgess will do so much work. I always remember John Morney taking the Wigan job in at the beginning of the 89-90 season. But he'd been announced at the end of 88. And basically, he'd spent 6 months liaising with Graham West, who was going to be his assistant, and he basically put all the systems in place towards the back end of the 88-89 season for him to take over. He said, and almost by evolution rather than revolution, the players at the beginning of 89-90 were doing 3/4 of what we wanted them to do anyway.
Yeah.
No, maybe Sam Burgess will do that. Maybe Sam Burgess will rock up in a white Cadillac and a big fancy suit and go all Warrington and just try and take over based on personality, based on glamour and razzmatazz, you know, which is very much Warrington-esque. Who knows?
That'll certainly be interesting to see next year.
It'll be interesting, yeah.
Right. That pretty much wraps up everything in Super League. A lot's gone on. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back just to quickly fly through the NRL. So we're going to have a quick look at the NRL. It was round 23, meaning there's only 4 rounds left before the playoffs start. Started off on Thursday with the Roosters versus the Sea Eagles. The Roosters really, really poor to start the season. Seem to have found a bit of form post-Origin. They could possibly make the 8 with a win against Manly, 26-16. Really impressive. Manly, though, they just seem completely lost. They're not a great side without Tom Trbojevic. I've never seen a team so dependent on one player. If he's there, they're a top 4 team. If he's not, I can't see him making the 8, and that's the honest truth with the Sea Eagles. Obviously, they're bringing in Luke Brooks, who could be an improvement and could help them out. But Manly, there's an awful lot of issues there, and Seabold's got a lot of work to do. The Roosters, Trent Robinson, turned a few things round. They're still below Manly in the league, but the form that they're in, I could see them possibly pushing for the 8. And if they get there, you never know with Manly. On to Friday, Gold Coast played the Warriors. The Warriors winning 28-18. A really impressive performance from both teams. But the brilliance again of Sean Johnson and the Warriors all playing around him makes them a team that are to beat for me. In third, the Warriors could go on to win the comp. It would be a massive achievement for New Zealand Rugby League. What do you think about that? Massive achievement for the Warriors if they were to win. How big that would be for New Zealand Rugby?
Yeah, as you know, you can write what I know about the NRL on the back of a postage stamp. It's not my thing. What I do know is that New Zealand 3 or 4 times have flattered to deceive.
Yeah.
They've been on the verge of something and then just fell away and not achieved what they should have done. They should have an advantage in the term of they've got a player pool coming out of New Zealand.
Yeah. They're starting to get into as well.
And the Pacific Island nations that they should have first dibs on, really. They should get into.
There's an awful lot of talk about the Warriors that it's becoming their major sport. It's competing with the All Blacks.
Yeah, well...
Which... Could you imagine us saying that 10 years ago?
Yeah, there's not much else in New Zealand, is there? So, yeah, it's good to see. I glance at the results, I glance at the table. I've noticed that they've been highly un-Warrior-like in that they have been pretty consistent with the odd blip. They'd be one of the teams that I'd like to do well.
Well, we'll move on to probably a top 4 clash. Penrith versus Melbourne. Melbourne were missing a couple. They're missing probably the star halfback, Jerome Hughes. They picked up an injury early on with George Jennings going off injured. But the Penrith Panthers just keep getting better. They've won 2 comps back to back. The top of the table with a game in hand on Brisbane. Cleary's come back from his injury. Hasn't skipped a beat. Absolutely flying. They are the team to beat for me, and I know I said I still think the Rabbitohs could win it, but if Penrith perform, there's almost no competition. That the spine that we talk about is brilliant.
Well, for 2 reasons, I hope Penrith don't win it. First reason is, again, with only a little bit of knowledge, they seem the type of team that are arrogant, cocky.
They've got a few players like that. Jerome Luai, who heaps a lot of criticism, and his comments after Origin were...
No, but listen, he's nowhere near this level, but they look like they've got 5 or 6 Jake Connors in the team,
There's a few things I don't like about them with Luai. When they lost the first Origin game and he came in to get some criticism, he starts going on social media posting that...
Yeah.
These guys need to go back to work, and it's like...
The second reason they let us all down in February, didn't they?
And, obviously.
Yeah, so they deserve a bit of
a bit of losing.
Yeah, for that. So, but there's no doubt about it. They've from what I understand, they lost a couple of big name players at back in the last year.
Yeah, Billy Kikau, Happy Carousel.
Yeah,
to the Bulldogs and West. They're losing a couple more this year.
Yeah, but they've never missed a beat, have they?
No,
I think early season they had a little bit of an hiccup, but overall they're still the number 1 team to beat.
Yeah.
So yeah, good on them.
We'll then go over to 2 very different sides: the Cowboys and the Broncos. The Broncos won 30 points to 14. The Cowboys started the year very, very poor. Seemed to find some form, and then everyone talks that they could get the 8. And then the last few weeks, they've just put in a couple of subpar performances. They lost to the Titans and then losing to the Broncos. It's no mean feat losing to the Broncos. They're arguably the second best team in the comp. The joint on points with Penrith. But it was the style of loss for me. Throwing interceptions. They just seem to try and play the hand a little bit too quick. And when you've got the firepower of Brisbane...
Well, listen, again, I don't know a lot about the NRL, but what I do know is that 2 weeks ago, everybody was saying, play the tape. The Cowboys can win the competition, could win the competition. When they were sat last early on in the season, was it Gus Gould?
Yeah.
Yeah, play the tape. Again, different kettle of fish when you then get into the 8.
To keep it.
To keep going, because then you're there to be shot at, and it's easy playing with no pressure. Like we see it in Super League with your OKRs, your Salfords. Potentially, what will happen to Lee when the pressure comes on? Do you still have the confidence to carry on playing the way you were that got you to where you were, with that no pressure?
No.
Yeah. Or does the pressure start to get to you, and then you start?
And I'm looking at the Cowboys running. They got to play Cronulla, who are fighting for the 8. Is that tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow. They got to play the Dolphins, who may be out of the competition then, and Penrith the week before the finals. Might want to cement top spot. It could be an interesting thing. But Brisbane, they've got some real firepower out back. Reece Walsh, Katoni Staggs, Herbie Farnworth, the Englishman, who's doing really, really well. He's off to the Dolphins next year on a big money move. What really stood out for me was that they won without Adam Reynolds. Adam Reynolds was injured. Even though they've got all this strike power, I've always worried that without Reynolds, they'll lose a bit of direction, lose a bit of control in games. They've done it without him, and they've done it convincingly without him. I think that's a massive sign for Brisbane. We'll move on though, onto the Dolphins versus Newcastle Knights. The Knights winning 30 points to 28. They've been completely revolutionised, I can't think of the right word, Newcastle. From almost being out of it and having no chance, they've won 5 of the last 5 and puts them in 7th. For a team that was long out of it and couldn't make the 8 and was being considered with the Bulldogs and St George. They've moved Ponga to full back. He's gone back to full back, and they are a different team. They're really impressing.
Well, looking at the fixtures, they've got the Bulldogs up this week, so they'll be thinking
You have to win that.
Thinking win, and then they've got what's looking like a key game. They play Souths the week after, so that in effect could be the proverbial 4-pointer, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It could decide whether they get in there or not. But again, from a casual observer, Newcastle have been down in the dumps for a few years. Start of this year, I knew they were down near the bottom, and then suddenly you look and they're in the top 8, and you think, where's that come from?
So it was weird with the Knights that they moved Ponga to 6. Caelan Ponga, who was the Queensland fullback before Reece Walsh. They moved him into the 6. He gets 2 concussions in his first 3 games, I think it is. They then sent him to Toronto to go and see a concussion specialist and whatever. Comes back, gets moved to fullback, and he's revolutionised that side. They're attacking threats on both sides of the field. They're brilliant. A side that we always talk about, the being one of the most able attacking, the Rabbitohs. I said last week I could still see them winning the comp because of the threat that they have if they get it right. They could win it from anywhere and they could beat anyone. The defence that they showed at the start of the season when they were top of the comp was unbelievable. But this last 10 weeks, to end up 26-0 down against the Sharks, who haven't been in the greatest of form, it was too easy for them. And the Rabbitohs scored with 15 minutes left. And I actually rang Matty up and I said, they could still win this. And they went try. Should have scored and they dropped the ball over the line. Score again. They could have very easily won this game still, having only played properly for 20 minutes. And that That's the worry for them, I think, that they know they can put points on so quick that they don't play 80 minutes of rugby back to back.
Well, there's one thing for certain. You're coming into the last 3-4 games, and then your 3 or so playoff games. They're going to have to start doing it now. You have to. Every team, whether it be in Super League or whether it be in NRL, you have to be very good in your last 6, 7, 8 games.
How you play at the end, isn't it?
Yeah. But when you push that, when do you push that button? When do you go 100%? When do you try and find that fifth gear? And looking at the table, they've not
actually
got one.
They play St George this week, which at home you should be looking for 2 points. The Knights, luckily for the Rabbitohs, I think they've got a bye, which is a guaranteed 2 points. But if the fixtures fall right and the results go the way they could be, the last game of the season could be the Roosters versus the Rabbitohs for the 8. That'd be another tail in the book of feuds, wouldn't it?
It certainly will.
Then onto a team that keep flattering to deceive and keep thinking they're going to make the 8, and then they put in a below average performance. They're sat in 9th, the Eels, winning 26 points to 20, coming back from 20 points to 10 down. The Eels, they just
Flatter to deceive.
Yeah, that's the phrase. I keep thinking they're getting everything right, and they're gonna go on this run now. They'll make the 8, and they can beat anyone in the 8. Clint Gutherson, Mitchell Moses, Dylan Brown now back after his suspended ban for off the field issues. You think that they're going to get it right. You think that it's all coming together, and they end up 20 points to 10 down again against the Dragons. Ravawala, the winger, I think he got 4 tries in this game. Yeah, he did, sorry, just checking there. And it took a one-on-one Junior Paolo to score to get it back to 2020, and a fumble from a kick for them to win it in the end.
The thing is about the NRL playoffs, they're a little bit more truncated, they're a little bit longer, aren't they? More teams in them.
So the top 4 play each other, play a game against one another, and they get a second chance if they lose. If you're outside the top 4,
blah blah blah. Yeah, but the key bit is, if you're a team that are rocks and diamonds, navigating those playoffs and having to win 4 in a row against the best
especially
teams,
if you miss the top 4,
you can't be rocks and diamonds.
No, you have to be consistent,
because there's always a bad performance in there, and that other team will beat you. Our playoffs, you can be a little bit more, even if you finish in 5th or 6th, you play
grand final.
Yeah, but you're playing a team 3rd or 4th, and you can scrape through, and then suddenly you can produce that game and make it in the semi-final. You can be a little bit more rocks and diamonds in our league. Statistics tell you that you're better off not being. The top 2 generally make it. But Parramatta, again, I only see what the people who watch it, and the 1 minute they're very high, and the next minute they're very low about the performances, and you can't do that over there.
No, not at all. Now, a team that Matty loves, he's a massive Canberra Raiders fan. They played the West. The Raiders are sat on 5th. They could make the top 4. They're joint on points with Melbourne, so that's going to be a competition for who can make the 4 there. But this performance, 22-18 against the Tigers. It's always interesting when you play that team at the bottom of the table who have nothing to play for, and they can sort of just start to throw the ball around. There's a couple of tries where they made big breaks on the right hand side, the Tigers, and then just launch the ball. They play so off the cuff that it's quite hard to defend against, really. It's a very difficult team to play against, the team that's
I'll tell you what I said. Like I say, obviously, I'll repeat again, I don't really watch that much NRL, etc. See clips, listen to what people say. One of the little things I do when I look at league tables, to judge whether a team deserves to be where they are in a ladder, is look at points difference. And you sat there, and every team above them, +277, +169, +121, plus 81, and then you get minus 74.
Well, this is it with the Raiders, right?
And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams below them with better points difference. And that says to me, and again, only looking at some of the results, is that when they win, they have to grind the win. They're not necessarily, they've not got that X factor.
So,
And when they lose and it doesn't go right, they get beat.
so they've won 11 of the last 17 games, the Raiders. In that, the max winning margin was 10.
Yeah.
The average, there's one after extra time, 1 pointer, they've won by 6, by 4, 10, 5.
And that's good for team spirit. That shows that you're together.
But when they lose, they lost to the Warriors by over 20, lost to Manly by over nearly 30, Penrith by nearly 40.
Yeah.
It
So-
can go very, very wrong.
That and you know, so it's the same old thing. If you can drag yourself into that arm wrestle and be in the game at 60 minutes, 65 minutes, you know how to get over that line. And
They know how to win when it matters.
But if something goes wrong in that first 10, 15 minutes, will it fall apart?
That's my worry with the Raiders. Obviously, Wes down in 17th, probably going to get the wooden spoon. Looking at it, if I just check the fixtures, the 4 points behind, 4 games left. I can't see him getting off the wooden spoon there.
Not really bothered, you know.
It's an interesting thing because obviously they got rid of Maguire, a coach that's well renowned.
Yeah. So there's a couple of little things with regards to the Hastings and Bateman thing and whatever, but I also know Paul Hawkins supports them, and because he's a St Helena and they're doing bad, that's all right by me. That's about as much as I know. Shout out to Paul Hawkins there for you.
Well, that'll wrap up the NRL then, I think. You've done quite well though, considering you don't like watching it too much.
It's not that I don't like watching it, you know. Just I
Don't get the
like
time
to have a dog in the fight, you know. And at this moment in time, I don't have a team as such.
Yeah.
I grew up on the older Parramatta teams of Kenny, Sterling, Grove, Mick Cronin, Ray Price, etc. But really,
not too worried about it.
no.
All right, well that wraps that up. When we come back in a minute, we're going to preview the Challenge Cup final and we'll mention the Saints Huddersfield game. Thank you. So, we're going to have a quick preview now of the 2 games that are taking part. We'll start off with the game on Sunday, St Helens versus Huddersfield. Saints probably would have been wanting a week off. This is the disadvantage of getting to the World Club Challenge and playing, that you've got to fit in that fixture that you miss somewhere else, and it's affected us in the past. Can't remember what year it was that we had to have a game.
It was 19. It was when we played Roosters at all.
Yes, yeah, we had to have that game rearranged, and
we had done it in 17 as well.
But having that game rearranged, it then means you don't get a free week when everyone else would. Saints, with their injuries that they've picked up in the last couple of weeks, you'd probably would expect them to want this week off.
Yeah, they certainly will, and don't forget the semi-final weekend as well. They would have hoped to have fitted that game in and around the semi-final if they hadn't been involved. Worst possible scenario is being involved in that game and then not winning.
Yeah.
So it's a knock-on effect into this week. Listen, Saints, very clunky, ball in hand, defensively, you're never going to shove 40 points on them.
No.
They're going to be a team that's going to drag you into an
80-minute match.
Yeah, 18-16, 20-14 type match, and you have to prepare to go to the last minute with them. No matter how many injuries they've got, they're not going to frighten you, I don't think, with pace from 30, in their own 30 or whatever.
But they're very methodical still.
Yeah, if you give them time and possession, field position in your 20, in your 30, they're going to do you. And that's what did Leeds the week before. They just kept turning the ball over in the wrong place.
Wrong time as well.
Yeah, a couple of 50-50 decisions, but a couple of errors in and around your own 20 and 30. And if you give Saints 3 sets in your 20, they're going to score.
They're going to come up with points.
Yeah.
Especially they've got a lot of threat with the centres and Hurl, and we can talk about his defensive deficiencies.
Yeah.
But if you get fatigue into your legs, he's going to make something happen. And
Percival, when he plays, he's a danger on the left. Hurl's a danger on the right. If you can get them playing for the last 8-9 games of the season, they'll be a difficult team to play against. Particularly as, even though the front two are out, Lees, Delaney are decent at prop, and they'll offer a threat.
they'll probably play Knowles as a
But
prop.
Saints back row, if they can get Matotia, Sirinen and Batchelor back, they pose a threat.
Yeah.
But, like we said earlier on, they're not playing the Huddersfield of April.
Yeah.
They're playing the Huddersfield of the last, 4 wins?
4 or 5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Huddersfield will be glad that this game's been rearranged.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the team that started the season,
Absolutely.
compared to the Saints at the start of the season, you would probably back Saints to
And
really take it to them.
Yeah, and in Huddersfield, if there is a team in this league, along with Catalan probably, if there is a team in this league that's prepared to go set for set, it's probably Huddersfield. It's the methodical Ian Watson Huddersfield.
Stick to the process.
So you know what? They'll kick, they'll chase, they'll go
Try
at
and pin Saints in corners.
Yeah, they'll go at 80% possession. Whether they've got enough to break St Helens' defence is debatable. They've been
Depends which Tuilala here turns
Correct.
up, which Connor turns
Which-
up. If
correct.
Jake Connor turns up, as much as I dislike Jake Connor and his personality,
he provides
make
moments.
something,
He
yeah.
provides 3-4 moments in a game that can either go very well or very bad.
if they all go right for him, he could get you 20 points. But,
Yeah.
So let's go on to the big one. The Challenge Cup final on Saturday.
Looking forward to it.
Really looking forward to it. Lee Hull KR. The big talk before this is almost about the game they played the week before. Hull KR have took the approach of basically resting most of the expected 17.
Yeah. Lee went strong.
They've rested Hardacre,
I think they had 3. I think there was 3
Charlie,
out.
and someone else.
One of the forwards.
Yeah.
One of the props. Yeah. So, OKR have thrown all their eggs in one basket. They were prepared to lose those 2 points.
And I think the fact that Lee did that and won is massive. Because
it very much is. So I was very impressed when I looked down at the Lee squad and saw that squad on Friday before the Wigan OKR match. I thought, good on them. I still thought they'd probably end up leaving 3-4
I
more
don't
out.
think Lachlan Lam would play.
No, and possibly a Pape as well. So to do what they've done, thoroughly deserve the win at Leeds. It absolutely reeks of a club that are not looking at this short term.
Yeah.
They're looking. They've kind of broke that chain
Of up, down, up, down.
of up down that they had for previous 6-7 years.
And I think they think they can win it. The entire thing.
Well, they're certainly one of those clubs that if injuries strike in 2 or 3 places for other clubs, they're in the best position to take advantage of it. I still think they're probably 4th, 5th best choice for winning it, because odds are you're going to pick up 1 or 2 injuries, and off the back of Wembley, even the best teams, sorry, not to disrespect Lee, but the best clubs that are used to going to Wembley and then playing in
Struggle the week
playoffs
after.
struggle. So, with Lee, they're going to have to fight all of that. But what you've absolutely got to do, is give them all the credit in the world for how they've approached the season, all the credit in the world of how they've approached Wembley. And now we're going to see a test. Can they play Wembley and play fresh? And then can they bounce back the week after? I think it's Catalans they've got.
It might be a case of that might be when they rest everyone. And, there's been the conversation, and I've seen it on Twitter and whatever, that did Hull KR disrespect the league? Did they do this? Are Lee better because they've done that? I'd been interested to see whether Lee would have rested players had they have beaten us the week before.
Well,
because obviously
I-
then you've got 2 points in the bag, and
yeah,
you might rest.
we're lucky, you know, me and
Yeah.
you and, you know, our friends, in that we've got a little bit of an insight into the League Club. For those who don't know, my cousin, your uncle Neil, is the CEO, ex-coach of Lee. So we get many chances to speak to him, and you know, I spoke to him before the semi-final, after the semi-final. I spoke to him this week, and they've used the term, we want to respect the competition. We want to be around every week. We want to be a club that never takes its foot off the gas and commits to every game. And you know, I always talk to people of other clubs about, when you're Wigan, you have to turn up every week.
Yeah.
Wigan wouldn't have won that semi-final against Hull KR and then rested 17, 18 players,
They can.
because that's not Wigan. Yes, they would have rested 3 or 4. You know, you might have seen Field out or French out or whatever.
Maybe a
But-
little Farrell.
Yeah, maybe a little, but they would have gone with a team to win that game, because that's what you have to be. Now, very early in this remarkable journey of Lee, they're doing the same thing. They're turning up every week. You know, there's an argument to say that they haven't got the infrastructure behind them to make that decision easy to rest 10 players, because
Yeah.
they haven't necessarily got 10 players to do that.
But they could have brought in a few short-term loans, and they could have.
Yeah, they could have done. They could have done, just like Ulker did. They haven't. They've gone for it, and good on them. Good on them.
So it's an interesting one. I think the bookies have Lee as favourites, don't they? Last I saw.
I haven't looked. I'll have a quick scroll. Now you're talking about it.
I'm edging with Lee. I think Lee are possibly favourites. I think they're in better form. I think the strike power that they've got matches that of Hull KR. You look at Hull KR centres and wingers, and that's probably their strong point, with Ryan Hall, Sean Kenny Dowell, Opacek, Ethan Ryan on that wing, and the house of Schneider and
It's interesting.
Lewis.
It's interesting, really, when you look at the setups of the two teams. There's some very good similarities, very good comparisons to make. They're both playing with the half-back type player at full-back.
yeah.
Yeah. You look at the wingers in Charnley and Briscoe and compare them to Hall,
And Ryan.
who was the original version of that winger, you know, that
Meters, but could finish.
that could finish. Who plays on the other wing?
Either Ethan Ryan, although he played on the wing when Hall pulled out of the squad in
Yeah.
the semi-final, or in his senior.
In his senior, but again, a similar type of player. That's 6 foot, not blessed with
Is it
lightning
in his senior,
pace.
sorry, or the others? I forgot which senior it
But,
is. Sorry.
but either way, you've got that in the centres. You've got
Strike power.
yeah, but they are your typical NRL style centres. You know, Erdacre, when he plays at centre, he's a different style of centre, but he's 6'2", big, strong, solid,
Meters,
make
defends
tackles, defends well. I'm presuming Ed Chamberlain will play on the other side, who I've liked the look of. You know, he comes up with his first share of tries, but he's been very solid throughout the year. You've got Opacek and Kenny Dowell, who do a similar thing. I think Lee, for me, probably just have the edge in the half-backs. I'm assuming Jordan Abdul's not going to play, because I've not
Abdul's
seen
not in
him
the
for...
squad.
Yeah, so
He's out
so
for
I
the
think
season.
Lee have just got the edge in the half-backs. But when you then look at the forwards, you've got that situation again where you haven't got a standout player.
Yeah, on either side.
On
really.
either side, you've got very solid type players with that bit of X at 9. You've got Purcell for LKR. You've got Ipape at Lee.
It's going to be interesting to see how them two line up, really, because Ipape has majority played a lot of minutes, whether that's playing the full 80 or playing 60, 65 with Joe Mellor doing a spell. Well, you compare that to how Parcell is used. Jez Litton has been starting, is the starting 9 And
A
Parcell
bit more
coming off.
solid. Yeah, he's come off as
coming off the
traditional
bench.
scooting
Yeah.
type role. Yeah,
Two
listen.
very different style players, but effective at what they do.
Yeah. I've just checked the odds there. Leah odds on favourites. OKR slightly against. I see it a little bit more closer than that. I think it could go either way.
I think it could go either way.
I think unfortunately an injury or so in a key position and somebody has to rejig the back line or it could change things. Outside of that, I just think Leah on this crest of a wave. But OKR come in, all guns blazing. But I think Lee, because of the way that they've played the game, pre-semi-final, post-semi-final, pre-final, and they've gone every week. And traditionally, you might see that as, they might be tired or whatever. But because of the crest of the wave and how new it is to the club, I think the adrenaline will get them through it. Where OKR, the last 6-8 weeks, since pre-semi-final or whatever, they've been a little bit up and down. I probably want Lee to win because
it would be a fairy tale story for either team, really.
Oh, listen,
If Lee win it to get promoted, win the Challenge Cup, be in the top 4.
I was 10, 11 years of age when Lee won the league in 81. I think it was 81, 82. OKR were winning at Wembley every other year along with Hull and Widnes. It's definitely got a very retro feel to it. Hull KR have got that support that if they start winning a few things, the 10,000, 12,000 gates will start coming back. I think I showed you a post of the average attendances around late 70s and early 80s. And Hull KR were averaging the 11, 12, 13,000s back in those days. Everybody else was averaging 5s and 4s. With the decline, with the progression of Wigan in the mid-80s, Hull and Hull KR's attendances dropped a little bit. Lee haven't got that.
Be interesting to see how many they take.
That's what I'm saying is the average over a season, they're never going to be a 10, 11, 12,000 type club.
Not for a while,
but
anyway.
They could be a 5, 6, 7,000 type club with all of the, razzmatazz that goes around them. Good on them. I hope they take 20,000 there. The whole town is behind it. I've seen some clips this morning of the coach leaving. A bit jealous. It gets to moments like that when you normally see the team coach leaving at 10 in the morning and all the fans are lining. We've got a bit blasé about it, I think, over the years, but certainly back in the early 80s when we were going, it was a massive thing. The coach leaving for Wembley. People used to take time off work and don't say anything to anybody, but I used to leave school and run it into Wigan and you'd wave them all off and then coming home was a big thing. You'd get 15, 20,000 people, so I've got a few Lee friends and I feel really, really pleased for them that after 50 years of going to Wembley, 40 years of winning the championship.
I'll openly admit that I doubted Lee and what Beaumont was doing, and he's got everyone behind them, and I'll be the first to hold my hands up and say fair play to what they've created there.
Did you watch the Derek Beaumont Super League documentary thing? It was from about 3 months ago, 2-3 months ago, and it explains a lot of the reasons behind the change. Speaks very highly of the Wigan Club, understanding that they were going to be that. Why would IMG come in, look at a crowd with 12, 13,000, plays in cherry and white, red and white hoops, got all this history behind them. Why do we need another club 5 miles away that do exactly the same?
Red and white
hoops and da-da-da-da-da. What is a Centurion? You've already got a Warrior. Why do we need it? And he spoke about that and again, over Christmas, New Year period 2022, we had an inkling because of Neil telling us that there were things and changes going on. Was I a bit of a sceptic, a doubter? Yeah, absolutely. Derek had done what he'd done in 2015, 15, 16, getting them into Super League. They took advantage of the Toronto situation in 2020.
Yeah.
Fair play to them. And actually, what was very interesting in that documentary was him talking about what happened in 2020 when Toulouse pulled out. They stood up and took the place, and then all the clubs agreed to a 14-team Super League in 2021. And as soon as a few clubs got a few wins and Lee were at the bottom, when it came to the vote, they voted against their own proposal and basically pulled the drawbridge up on Lee to include them in a 14-team league.
Yeah.
And Derek's very, very bitter about that and said, I made a vow to come back up as soon as possible, and when we did, we were going to go up and pull the drawbridge on a team that voted against us.
Yeah.
You know, so it's very interesting documentary.
People don't forget them things.
No. I'd like to. Actually, I mean, you know, again,
I'd love to sit down and talk to him about it.
Yeah, well, Neil's promised to come on the show.
Yeah.
He wants to leave it towards the back end later on in the season because they've got their own podcast things that they're setting up, which leads into an interesting conversation that I wanted to bring up, really, regarding the cup final. I know Hull KR made the final in, was it 2017?
2017.
But
Is
actually,
that when they played Leeds?
when they played Leeds. But actually, both clubs are going to have to deal with the palaver of the Challenge Cup final. And I don't really care too much about football, but I remember talking to a Tottenham fan when they made the European Cup final, the Champions League, against Liverpool. And I said, they'll not beat Liverpool. And it's like, well, man for man, we've got X player and X player and X player. And I just explained, or I said in my opinion, what you don't kind of give respect to is all of the stuff that goes on off the field. Tottenham were going to have to figure out who gets tickets for the final. Where do they get the suits from? What's the travel arrangements like? All of those things that drain energy out of the club before you even play the game. And speaking to Neil this week, he's experienced that. But the difference this time is they're not going in against a St Helens or a Leeds or a Wigan that don't have that problem because they know how to handle that side of things. They're going in against another club that's going to have to deal with all of that in OKR that are not used to all of those goings on off the field. And, you know, it might not sound much to people, but Neil was telling me this week that they're all working 20-hour days. The merchandising that they've done behind the scenes, they've sold 8 months of merchandise in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That takes time, effort. It drains, it takes your focus away from the one thing that you're there to do, which is win the game. Now, how do you kind of, your players and whatever, they had to organise all of the hotels, all of the coach travel, the suits.
Do you treat it as a
Well,
I suppose that's your point really, that the dealing with Hull KR who haven't been there for 6 years.
Correct. It's a much more of a level playing field.
Yeah.
What you know is if Lee had been playing Wigan this weekend,
Wigan know what to
Wigan know exactly what to do, and they can 100% focus on that game. The both teams are
a bit fresh to it.
Yeah. No, Lee are totally embracing it. Lee are saying it's all part of the experience. Let's soak it all up. Let's experience. I don't know, obviously, what attitude Hull KR's got to it. We saw last weekend that they hid the players away from it. When we kick off, there'll be two contrasting styles approaching that final. But like I say, I admire what Lee have done. My loyalties will lie with Lee tomorrow. On Saturday. I hope they do it. I hope it's a good game. I hope the weather's good for everybody. So it's going to be really interesting.
So,
just one final thing behind the scenes. I know it's a little bit of it has been in the press, but you have to admire Beaumont and their officials regarding how they've looked after people,
Yeah.
the charity stuff that they've done. You know, we've all seen the bike rides. We've all seen the promotion before the Wigan game with regards to looking after carers
Yeah.
in the society. Well, I don't know if people know, but they've hired 50 coaches.
Yeah.
And they're taking the best part... they've hired 50 coaches. 10 of those coaches are being filled with disadvantaged children from in and around the Lee area.
Wouldn't necessarily get the chance to go and watch this game.
They wouldn't, because these are the people that are struggling to pay the bills, people struggling to put food on the table, etc. And for Derek and the club to send
He's paying for that.
He's paying for all of that. Well, I tell a lie. Derek's created a GoFundMe page. He personally has put £5,000 into it. The club have sacrificed X amount with regards to tickets and give them free tickets. The Wigan Council have put £5,000 into that GoFundMe page. Other people have put money in there. They're going to basically feed and those people, give them the free tickets. He's embraced the community.
Yeah.
We talk very much about what Matty Pete's done, engaging and the club engaging the local community clubs, etc. This, as a one-off, is like an extension of that, and he's saying we're not just going down, we're all going down. Obviously, literally speaking, they're not. Everybody's going down, but everybody's been able to apply for those tickets, and I think it's a really, really positive thing that he's done to engage the community to make sure that the whole town has got stories to tell in years to come.
Yeah.
So good on him.
Well, that wraps it up, really. Hopefully it'll be a brilliant day for everyone that goes down. It's always a little bit gutting into it when it gets to like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you think, should be driving down on Saturday.
Yeah. With regards to Wigan, it's a missed opportunity. Another one that we could have been involved in and could have won. You know what you've got to do? You've got to dust yourself down now and make sure we get another opportunity in 6 weeks' time at Old Trafford.
But it'll be a really good day for everyone that's there.
Yeah.
Good luck to both teams. And, well, that wraps up this episode, really. So thank you for joining me, Andrew.
No problem.
Sounds really weird calling you Andrew. But thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.